I was 22 and had recently started dating Joe, the handsome guy I'd met in my abnormal psych class. Joe was soft-spoken, down-to-earth, and to my parents' dismay, not Jewish. We hit it off immediately. I'm not a Jap, but I had some expectations when Joe invited me away for the weekend. I was thinking candlelight dinners, flowers, and a hotel that at least qualified for a star rating. Joe had slightly different plans. Joe said, "Let's go camping." I bought a new tent that I'm dying to try out. Joe is from an Irish Catholic family of 5 boys and grew up in a small house near Coral Way. He drank heavily sweetened café con leche out of teeny tiny plastic cups and had an impressive Spanish vocabulary. I grew up in North Miami Beach, a haven for Jews in the 70s. My people drank brewed Sanka, and they mixed it with sweet and low that they collected from local area restaurants. I couldn't speak Spanish. In fact, I would have failed Spanish class if not for the extra credit I earned by eating dinner at La Correta. What I should have said was, "Joe, come on. I'm a Jewish girl. We don't do outdoors." But I really liked him, and I didn't care that we came from different backgrounds or had different interests. So instead I replied, "That's so cool. What's the name of the campground?" "We're not going to a campground, Andrea. We're going primitive camping in the Everglades." I had no idea what primitive camping was, but it didn't sound good. The next weekend, his car was packed with camping essentials. "Don't forget the marshmallows," I said. "Forget the marshmallows," Joe replied. "Don't forget the toilet paper. And we'll stop for bait along the way." "We're catching our own food? Awesome." We drove for hours looking for what Joe called the perfect spot, a flat open area surrounded by dense trees in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Perfect spot, I thought, maybe to dispose of a body. I quickly discovered that primitive camping meant no electricity, no running water, and no break from the mosquitoes wanting in on a romantic weekend. Nauseated from the drive and exhausted from unloading the car, I was ready for my flowers and about a half a dozen s'mores. "Let's go for a hike," Joe suggested. "A hike? You mean a walk?" "No, a hike. Let's hike." It always bugged me when outdoorsy folk called walking hiking. Why did they think that if they strapped on a backpack or carried a compass, that something they've done since the age of 2 would magically become a rugged sporting activity? But I really liked Joe, so I went along. During our hike, Joe proudly identified every species of plant that we encountered. But Joe didn't only know their common names. Joe knew their scientific names. He said that when he was younger, he was in the 4-H club. 4-H is some sort of after-school organization for kids who like to be outside. I didn't even know trees had scientific names. My after-school activities consisted of watching General Hospital with my sister while gorging on Pop-Tarts and packaged bologna. An hour in, I had to pee. I knew from Trivial Pursuit that the average bladder held 16 ounces of liquid, and I had just finished the water in my 2-liter canteen. I was good at math, but who the hell knew how to do metric conversion? So before it was too late, I raced over to the bushes and I pulled down my Jordache jeans. My parents cautioned me about touching the foliage because, in my mother's words, Andrea, God forbid you should get poison ivy without an emergency room close by. I spread my legs and I arched backwards, careful not to make contact with anything resembling nature. I thought that if I squeezed hard enough, I could force a projectile stream of urine that would clear all exposed body parts by at least 4 inches. Maybe I wasn't that good at math, because my calculations were way off. On top of everything, I forgot the toilet paper. I couldn't ask Joe for help. He was such a straight-laced guy, and I knew he wouldn't want to fool around with a girl who had just given herself a golden shower. I panicked. I kicked off one of my Reeboks, and I used my white sock with the pink pom-pom to wipe away any evidence. I would have used a leaf, but Mom's voice rang loudly in my ear. Andrea, God forbid poison ivy on your hoo-ha. As I hopped back to the tent, I had an epiphany. I would invent a disposable cup that allowed women to pee standing up. I was spinning with design ideas. Joe interrupted my creative process. He wanted to go canoeing. Yes, I really liked him, but another outdoor activity? I'd rather stay back and work on a prototype, I said. Do you have one of those cafe con leche cups and a scissor, I asked. Joe looked at me like I was crazy. I was frustrated that he wasn't more prepared. Fuck 4-H, why couldn't he have been a Boy Scout? Later, as the sky darkened and the stars twinkled, Joe made a campfire. We talked for hours and the fire served as our candlelight. In that moment, I actually forgot that I despised primitive camping and discovered we had many similarities. Our values, sense of humor, and most importantly, our love of grilled cheese sandwiches. Joe cooked a big slab of steak on the open flame, and we roasted corn on the cob. We talked and laughed, ate and laughed some more. But with all that laughing, I started choking and I couldn't breathe. Maybe he learned the Heimlich in 4-H, but I wasn't taking any chances. I stuck my fingers down my throat and grabbed onto the end of a half-chewed piece of meat. With one magician-like pull, I spared myself from becoming a camping-related statistic. I couldn't sleep that night. Between Joe's snoring, the smell of urine, and the jagged pebbles that were lodged into the small of my back, it was not the romantic evening that I had envisioned. Still, 4 years later, we were married. And then another 4 years, divorced. I always thought it was our differences that led to our demise. I never did learn to enjoy camping or fishing, but I eventually developed a hankering for walking and women. I guess we were more alike than I thought. Life is for learning about who you are and what you want. Back then, I wanted Joe. So when our marriage ended, I'll admit, a part of me died. Thank God it was the outdoorsy part. Thank you.